I had owned that piece of land for years. It was legally mine and every document proved it. But one morning, HOA Karen Victoria Hayes marched onto my property with a sheriff. She pointed at me and accused me of being a squatter. She claimed I had no right to be there. According to her, the HOA controlled the property and I was occupied illegally. The sheriff looked at my documents, then looked back at Karen. Something about her story clearly wasn't adding up. I handed the sheriff the original deed. It clearly showed my name as the legal owner. Karen immediately insisted the document couldn't be real. So the sheriff asked one simple question. Where's your proof? Karen pulled out the HOA rule book like it was a law. She claimed their regulations gave them authority over my land. But an HOA rule book doesn't magically erase a property deed. And I knew exactly where this conversation was heading. I walked them to the property boundary. The survey markers were still exactly where the county records showed them. The HOA had apparently been treating my private land as community property. Karen's confidence started disappearing. The sheriff decided to verify everything directly with the county. He contacted the property records office and gave them the parcel number. A few seconds later, his expression completely changed. The records confirmed exactly what my deed said. The sheriff turned toward Karen and gave her the answer she didn't want to hear. Nathan Carter was the legal owner of the property. Karen wasn't dealing with a squatter. She had just accused the actual owner of trespassing on his own land. Karen still refused to back down. She insisted the HOA had somehow acquired rights to the property years earlier. The sheriff asked her for the recording, deed, or court order proving it. Karen had nothing. Then Karen made one final mistake. She demanded that I identify myself before she would leave. I reached into my wallet and showed the sheriff my official county identification. His eyes widened when he realized exactly who I was. I wasn't just a property owner. I was a county judge who had spent years overseeing local legal matters. Karen had called the sheriff to remove me from my own land. Instead, she had just introduced herself to the very judge who would review her HOA's actions. Karen's story was about to face something she couldn't argue with: official records. We went to the county records office and pulled the original property map. The boundaries matched my deed perfectly. There was no HOA ownership anywhere on it. The map showed exactly where my property began and ended. The HOA had been using part of my land for years without permission. Karen stared at the map in silence. Her biggest argument had just disappeared. Then we discovered something even bigger. The HOA had installed signs, landscaping, and community equipment on my property. They had treated my land as though it belonged to them, and nobody had ever asked me for permission. I showed the sheriff every unauthorized improvement. The gate, the signs, and even part of the landscaping crossed my property line. Karen subtly stopped calling me a squatter. Now she was trying to explain why the HOA was on my land. The HOA board was called into a formal county meeting. Karen arrived expecting to defend herself. Instead, she found the evidence already organized on the table. Every document told the same story. I presented the deed, survey, county maps, and photographs. There was nothing complicated about it. The land belonged to me, and the HOA had no ownership interest in it. The room went completely silent. Karen finally admitted she had never personally checked the property records. She had simply trusted an old HOA map. That mistake had turned into a major dispute, and now the entire board had to answer for it. When the hearing ended, the sheriff shook my hand. Several neighbors who had watched everything finally approached me. They apologized for believing Karen's accusations. For the first time, everyone knew the truth. The unauthorized HOA equipment was ordered removed from my property. The boundaries were restored exactly according to the county survey. Karen had wanted to control my land. Instead, she ended up losing access to it. That day taught the HOA a lesson they should have learned from the beginning. A rule book doesn't replace a deed, and an accusation doesn't change ownership. My land was mine before Karen ever arrived, and it remained mine after she left. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from?